tonight we're going to jump into Genesis chapter 4 and verse 16 and through 26. And to be honest, it is genealogies, but it's important, okay? So please hang on. You'll get to your Mickey D's McDouble soon, I promise. We will be done soon. And what?
McDonald's lobby is closed.
Oh, McDonald's lobby. There you go. You don't even have to go to McDonald's. There you go. You can get it through the drive-thru and hang out in the parking lot. There you go. Just don't get in trouble for loitering or something. Anyway, so two legacies here. Two legacies that we see. I've got a couple of questions to ask you. Now, you don't have to raise your hand, okay? All right, just answer this in your head. How many of you are in contact with your children? And how many of you have any influence on your children still yet? Have you had any influence on them at all in their entire life? Okay? Now let's jump into the next one, which for some of you is way more fun than the first questions I asked. How many of you actually are in contact with your grandchildren? Yeah, everybody gets smiles on their faces. Yeah, I love my grandchildren. Okay, but how many of you believe that you actually have an influence over them? Have you had an influence on them as of yet? Okay, I'm going to try to answer that question not only tonight, but as we go into the next passages into chapter 5, which we're not tonight. But as we go into chapter 5, you'll see the same exact thing as we go through here. But we're going to take care of Cain's legacy first, and then we'll jump into Seth's legacy. But you have two of them tonight. And there is the question of influence. Do we actually influence our children and our grandchildren? Do the things that we do the decisions that we make, do they affect how our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren and so on down the line? Does it affect the way that they live and the way that they make decisions? Do they look up to Grandpa so-and-so? That's my grandpa. He does some weird things. But yeah, I love my grandpa, right? That's where some people, there's some things that my grandfathers did that was just super weird. I'm not going to say it for the sake of your minds tonight, okay? But yet some of the things that they did, it was just so embarrassing. But yet there was some respect that you had for your grandparents, right? But how much influence do they have on you? Do you want to have that kind of an influence? One of the stories that I will remember, I hope to the rest of my life, is my great-grandfather. And how when he was younger, he used to play baseball, a part of a team. Okay, and they didn't have so many vehicles back then as far as the opportunity for it. And so in order to get to baseball field, he would ride his bike. But in order for his wife to go along, she'd have to sit up on the handlebars. And she hated going to baseball. I don't know if it was because it was painful to sit on the handlebars or what it was. Did anybody else sit on the handlebars when they were younger, riding on the handlebars? While somebody else, you put your life on the line for somebody else that was driving that bike, right? But yet she would do that. And you know what? My grandfather realized that even though that was a love and enjoyment for him, he decided to quit baseball because he knew that his wife hated going. And in fact, I know it's crazy that he went to this point, but yet when she was older in life, my great-grandmother couldn't watch TV because she started going blind, and all she could see was, the images. She couldn't actually see detail. She couldn't see all those things. And my great-grandfather realized that, and I didn't realize that he was a huge sports fan until after she passed, because he never watched it around her because he knew it would make her feel bad. I'm just thinking what kind of self-sacrifice my great-grandfather had for my great-grandmother. I mean, that's something that I want to hold on to for the rest of my life. And some of you probably have stories, some good, some bad, that you want to hold on to. Some things that you don't want to do that your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents did, that you want to stay far away from, but then there's some things that you really hold on to as an example. And as we get into this, you'll see in Cain's legacy that Cain didn't have a great one. You go into verse 16, we see here, it says, "And Cain went out from the presence of the Lord and dwelt in the land of Nod, on the east of Eden." Now, Nod, that name is actually, it refers to flight, exile. It's pointing to the fact of what Cain is doing, okay? You know, back then, they had the privilege of, they were the pioneers. I mean, they were going out and they were creating the names for everything because they were the first people, right? And so they're going to the land of Nod, which means flight, exile. He's going out of the presence of God. He didn't walk with God. He was on the opposite side of the scale. And he goes. His legacy has already started by him walking away from the presence of God before he even has any children. This is his legacy, to choose to murder his brother because his sacrifice wasn't accepted and his brother's was. And it goes on in verse 17, "And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch." Now, don't get that confused with the other Enoch that you'll see in chapter 5. But he has a son, Enoch, and he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son, Enoch. Now, some people will struggle with this verse right here because of several different things that's going on. Now, when he was cursed, when God gave him his consequences, he said that you will be a vagabond. You will be a wanderer. You won't be able to settle. The way that you made a living or cared for yourself and your family before, because he was the farmer. He'd go out and he was the gardener, and he would get the fruits and the veggies, and he would collect those, and that's how he provided for his family. And yet God said that the earth will not yield its fruit to you anymore. You will consistently wander. Wow, that's depressing. I mean, just, you'll never be able to settle. Now, God commanded and cursed this upon Cain as a consequence, but you see here in this verse that Cain just went on and he built a city. Now, I believe that he didn't get to dwell there because he was cursed. He built it for his son Enoch, a place that he could settle. Now, this thought is still in my mind as far as his attitude goes, that have you ever been told no on something and you were so angry and mad and so rebellious that you in essence shook your fist at those who told you no and decided to do whatever you wanted to do? You wanted to spite them. Now, God gave me an example of this, in essence, today. He gives me examples of myself so that I could be reminded of what I'm preaching. Okay, so you know that first intersection, it's the main intersection in Taylorville, okay? Right by, CVS, Walgreens. And you know how you're coming in from, if you're coming in from, Burton Eddy, and you're coming in that way, and you're stopped there, you're in that right lane, and you're trying to turn to go towards the church, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm waiting. I wait for the people that have the right of way. I believe that I have the right of way. When it's a red light for me, I wait for them to go ahead and go. Well, somebody behind me didn't believe the same way that I believe. And I got honked at a few times. Now, I think we've had this story before. At that light, I struggle with a lot of temptation at that light, by the way, okay? But yeah, I got honked at by this Dodge Ram that was behind me. Now, it was not Mason Clayton, okay? For those of you who thought it was a silver Dodge Ram for anyone who might be related to this person and wants to get on them later. But anyway, I hope you're watching. All right. Anyway, this Dodge Ram is behind me, and they keep honking, and I just keep waiting. There's cars coming. And I had a little bit of time in there that I could have gone, but I decided, because they kept honking, I just turned around and waved at them, okay? It's that kind of spite. Now, I was very nice. I wasn't evil. I just waved. I waved with my whole hand, okay? And then I went, got into the left lane. They tried to rush up right next to me, and I waved again. But they couldn't pass me. You know, sometimes people try to pass you in that lane. They couldn't pass me because there was a vehicle in front of them, and there was a vehicle in front of me, so I couldn't go any faster. So I just kind of kept up with them for a little while, and I just kept waving. That kind of hard-headedness, God shows me so that I can preach it later on, right? But get it in the evil sense. I did it in the nice sense. I was just waving. I was being really nice to this person, whoever it was. If it was one of you, shame on you. All right. But just think of it in the Cain, in the evil sense. I mean, if somebody tells you can't do something, he's going to do and find every way around trying to do exactly what he was told not to do. It's kind of like my son the other day. They were painting the parking lot black the other day. And my son, we were walking around it, and I should have put him on the other side, but yet he was the one closest to the parking lot, and we were walking right next to it, and I looked over and I said, I'm just going to take care of it right now, okay? Ken, don't touch, don't step on, don't do anything with the black parking lot. You know what he did? He tried to stretch exactly after I told him, don't do it. He stretched as if I wasn't watching. Now that's evil. My son's evil. I am not, okay? He's still a pagan. He's still a sinner. He's not saved, okay? So, but I mean, just think of it. This is the kind of attitude that Cain has. I'm going to go and act as if I'm going to settle. I'm going to set up this place, my kingdom, for my son. Now, some of you struggle, where did Cain get his wife? Well, the only answer is from one of Adam and Eve's other children. You see in Genesis chapter 5 and verse 4, it says, in the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. There were other daughters. You say, well, isn't that weird? Yeah, to us. But that was your only option back then. There weren't any cousins at that point. Okay? And it wasn't until Leviticus chapter 8 and verse 9 that we see that God actually states in his law that you shouldn't be with your sister. Okay? The nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. Okay? And so there came a point in time where it became a rule, a law, where you couldn't get with your sister. But at this point, listen, if you could say the genes were clean, the genes were pure. He didn't have all these problems that we have today with where we have to protect ourselves from getting any closer than the first and what is the second cousin? Is that the second cousin? Is that no kissing cousins? Is that where we're at? I don't know. As long as you're in Taylorville, right? You go to other towns, you never know. What about in Kentucky or West Virginia? I don't know. We'll have to ask the Leonards. They're in West Virginia. So, I mean, it was at this point, up until Leviticus, that God actually denounced this issue. So this is where Cain would have gotten his wife. And so they went off. They had their son. He built a city. He's got an attitude. But it goes on and it shows you the rest of his line. Now, I apologize already because I'm probably going to get these pronunciations right. But my salvation is not based upon my pronunciation of these names, so we're good. It says, and unto Enoch was born Irad, and Irad begat Mehujael, and Mehujael begat Methusael. At least they were close. And Methusael begat Lamech. And Lamech took unto him 2 wives. Can we all say, not smart dumb move. Okay, what did God establish? What did God establish? He established marriage between a naturally born male and a naturally born female. We have to say that nowadays, remember? Because it's confusing. Unless you look at God's Word. Wouldn't it be nice if our public school system actually looked at God's Word as the baseline? It wouldn't be so confusing. They wouldn't have to have all these extra classes and sign in all these extra bills, like the one that Pritzker just passed. If we just follow God's laws, it wouldn't be such a mess. But you know what? When you don't follow God's laws, it becomes a little chaotic. I think it's just a dumb move for him to have two wives just for the sake of that. It's hard enough with just two people that are sinners 24/7, right? Isn't it hard enough trying to manage a relationship with someone who's a sinner? And I have a sinner saved by grace, and my wife has a sinner saved by grace. And so praise the Lord for salvation, and at least we have a baseline to look to. But can you imagine trying to add in another one? And I don't understand why the Mormons tried to jump into that boat. It doesn't make any sense except for sin. You see chaos. You see a mess. How many times do you see a mess whenever there's a polygamy? I mean, just how many times? As you go throughout, some of the patriarchs tried to take this on. Abraham, you remember him? With his wife, and she says, well, why don't you try out Hagar, just in case she can give you a child? Did that create a mess? Yes, it did. Not only for Sarah, but also for Isaac when he came down the line. Any others? Jacob? What? It's created a mess for us. It's confusing. When people are mixing and matching and, man, it gets chaotic. And trying to keep it all together and to manage it, it gets just absolutely chaotic. And you know that God actually talks about it in Deuteronomy chapter 21 and verse 15 through 17. Can you jump up forward to that, Carlton? If a man have two wives, one beloved and another hated, then why did you have the other one, right? Okay. And they have borne him children, both the beloved and the hated. And if the firstborn son be hers that was hated, then it shall be when he maketh his sons to inherit that which he hath, that he may not make the son of the beloved firstborn before the son of the hated, which is indeed their firstborn. But he shall acknowledge the son of the hated for the firstborn by giving him a double portion of all that he hath, for he is the beginning of his strength. The right of the firstborn is his. And he's saying, listen, it's going to create issues when all of a sudden strife comes up. And then the children suffer for the sake of whatever bad decisions that the parents made, right? He's saying you're creating chaos here. And you're not going to defy whatever rules that he set in place just because you don't like what's going on. There's politics within the family. This has created chaos. But you know, you go on in these verses, and it says in verse 19, and Lamech took unto him two wives. The name of the one was Ada, and the name of the other Zillah. And Ada bare Jabal. He was the father of such as dwell in tents, and of such as have cattle. And his brother's name was Jubal. Why do you make them so close? It reminds me of Grayson and Griffin, right? And you know, why do you make them so close? I had twins that I was friends with growing up, Alan and Adam. Oh, you just make it difficult on all the friends. I mean, come on, make it like Zephaniah and Adam or something like that. Make it easy. But you know, you got to make it Jubal and Jabal, right? And it goes on, he was the father of all such as handle the harp and the organ. And Zillah, she also bare Tubal Cain, an instructor of every artificer in brass and iron. And the sister of Tubal Cain was Naamah. And Lamech said unto his wives, Ada and Zillah, hear my voice, ye wives of Lamech. Hearken unto my speech, for I have slain a man to my wounding, and a young man to my hurt. And if Cain shall be avenged sevenfold, truly Lamech 70 and sevenfold. So you not only see that he's got an issue with polygamy, but he also has an issue with pride. Did you see this? Hey, bring it in. I got a speech for you. Wives of Lamech. I think I'd get smacked if I said that. Wife of Taylor. Listen up. She should smack me after that, right? I mean, he's got a stool to step on here. Maybe he was a short guy. You think he was a short guy? Did you have a stature issue, okay? And he had to step up on his stool and say, wife of Lamech, wives of Lamech, I've got a speech for you. Listen up. I murdered a guy. He wounded me. Some young guy, he wounded me and I killed him. And you know what? If there was an agreement with God, with Cain, about how if someone had done anything to Cain, that it would be upon them sevenfold, make it 77-fold for me. Let me ask this question. Who are you, Lamech? Do you know this kind of pride makes me wonder how he treated his wives? Because this kind of pride often goes into a controlling factor. I got to control everything, anything about what's going on in my family. And if they don't add up, boom, they will answer. He's got to control it. Somebody came against him and wounded him, and so he takes their life. You know, people who respect life and have to defend themselves, because some people might come into this and say, well, didn't Lamech just defend himself? I don't believe that. There could have been a fight that, who knows, he could have started with his arrogance that he had. It wasn't stated there. But yet the fact of the matter is he took the man's life. But you know, people who respect life don't wear it as a badge that they killed somebody. They don't like to talk about it. Taking an image bearer's life is not a badge to hold on to. But you know what? When you start to question everything, what God has told you and what he's set in place, you start to question how God values other human beings. Didn't God say that he would create man in his own image? And yet this is where Lamech is. And this is the attitude. This is what they held on to. This is the fist in being held up to God. You're going to tell me I can't do this? Guess what? Guess what? We're going to flourish. We're going to prove you wrong. We're going to live this out, because you know what? You know these sons of Lamech, do you know how they were described? They were described as successful business people. Culturally, everyone could look upon them and say, you have it all together. Look at your sons. Man, how amazing. Jabal, father of those who dwelled in tents and had herds of cattle. Jubal, father of musicians. Tubal-Cain, instructor in metalworking. Wow. Oh, it's amazing to see what your children can do. And Lamech step up on that stool. Wives of Lamech, listen to me. Look at what I've done. Look what I've established. Look how far I've come from Cain, who was the wanderer, the unsettled. Let me ask this. If you had an option to be culturally accepted or God accepted, which one would you choose? As a parent, as a grandparent, as a great-grandparent, or farther on down the line, would you rather your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren to be accepted by God, or accepted by culture. They were okay with this. And you know, despite all of this, do you know how merciful, how amazing our God is, despite all of this? You know, in the midst of this, that he never wiped them off the face of the map. He allowed them to keep having children. You know, you could have fixed the problem by just stopping them from having more children, right? But you know, there's something that got me this past week. Evangelist Tom Engel, he asked for a raise of hands for those who are first-generation Christians, those whose parents weren't Christians. And people in our church raised their hand. You know, God kept allowing them to have more and more children and for their lineage to continue on so that they could have a chance to have a relationship with him. Isn't our God good? The God of mercy, the God of love, the God of grace that allowed them to develop in their metalworking and in their cattle and in their music. It's amazing to see what God allows so that they could have a chance to come to him. But real quickly, there's two more verses here. Verse 25 says, and Adam knew his wife again, so going off to a different direction. And she bare a son and called his name Seth. For God said, she hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So she probably thought that Cain was going to be something. Then he killed his brother. So now she needs a substitute for Abel. God has granted me, God has given me this gift, God has given grace here, and maybe he's the one that's going to fulfill Genesis 3:15. That's probably the thought that is always coming to these people's minds as God has given this promise. That is something that you need to be thinking about all throughout the Old Testament. They are looking for the completion of this prophecy. And she's saying, hey, listen here, thank God for this, who's given me Seth. And to Seth, to him also there was born a son, and he called his name Enos. I love this. Short, sweet, simple, to the point. Then began man to call upon the name of the Lord. Now, chapter 5 is going to be filled with Seth's legacy as it continues to go on. And we'll see Methuselah, we'll see Enoch, we'll see Noah in his line that comes. But then I love this. Then they began to call upon the name of the Lord. So let me ask this. Let me ask you this. Okay? Would you rather be known for the cultural acceptance of being successful, or would you rather be known for one who calls upon the name of the Lord? Now, don't get me wrong here, okay? Those who call upon the name of the Lord should be great musicians. Those who call upon the name of the Lord should be great scientists. Those who call upon the Lord should be great metal workers. Those who call upon the name of the Lord should be great teachers, should be great politicians, should be great policemen, should be great fill in the blank. Why? Because we serve and glorify our God. So when we sing to the name of the Lord. When we teach to the name of the Lord. When we play our instruments, we play to the name of the Lord. When we become scientists, we are searching what God has created. Wow. We have one up on all those who claim that there is no God because they have no idea what's going on with the origins of our creation. We know the starting point. Wow. We could have great politicians. What? Hold on. Hold your horses. You mean there's Christian politicians out there? I believe so. It's few and far between, okay? But I believe that we could have politicians who serve their people in the name of the Lord. And there's some of them out there. We can have athletes that are out there who serve in the name of the Lord. They play in the name of the Lord. But you know what? That sport is not their God. God is. That instrument is not their God. God is. That party, that political party is not their God. God is. You get what I'm saying here? Everything that we do, whether you work for Ameren, whether you work for Walmart, whether you work for Taylorville Junior High, whether you work for the high school, whether you work for a funeral home, whether you work at LP, whether you work at wherever it might be, we get to be those who call upon the name of the Lord. So we should be the best workers because we worship our God. So do you think that you have any influence on those who come after you? Your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren? You do. So how much have you called upon the name of the Lord lately? Are you known for your worship of your God? You known for your service for God? Have anybody asked you who is your guiding light in your life lately because of the way that you present yourself? Have they seen Jesus through you lately? Wow. That's what I hope for my family. I may joke about my son being a pagan and my daughter, my oldest, is saved, praise the Lord. But she's still a sinner, saved by grace, right? I hope that the legacy of my children would be those who call upon the name of the Lord. Do you know what I've noticed lately? I cannot rely on the world to parent my children, because they do a horrific job. I have to be intentional about reaching into my children's lives and telling them about Jesus and the reason why I serve my Jesus. It's not just something I talk about and say that they have to do because they have to go to church. It's something that I have to live. It's a theology that I base my life upon. I have to make God real for them. Whenever I get grandchildren, which is very far down the road, I have to do the same exact thing. I have to step into the gap. We need to do that. There are children all around us, teenagers all around us, adults all around us that have never had a parental figure that actually loved them enough to show them how God is real. And they need to see the church and this community as being just that. And when you look on social media, there's not a whole lot of people that have a positive light on how they view the church. Did anybody see the Taylorville Anonymous post lately? Where somebody was complaining about how there's 30-some gambling establishments in Taylorville now. Isn't that crazy? And they joked and they said, next they'll be in churches. You know, I read the comments underneath. You know what I saw? Hey, that's fitting. That's all that churches do. They take your money and they serve you wine. My heart broke. Because that's people's view of church. Selfishness on display. Handing over addictive things. that would consume you. That broke my heart. So people automatically have a view that's negative towards the church. Why would they step inside those doors? Obviously, somebody's ruined it for them, and they haven't been able to get past that and to have forgiveness. I mean, so what are we going to do? We're going to give up as a church and say, well, it's already done. Taylorville's done. It's no longer a great place to live. Let's move out. Let's go to Tennessee. Or are we going to do what God's called us to do and be that light to reach out into our community and to be those parental guidance that's based on the Word of God? Are we going to be those workers, those metal workers, those Walmart workers, those coffee workers, whatever it might be, that says, I call upon the name of the Lord? Those retirees, you still have a job. You're not retired from Christianity. As tough as it is, I can't say that I understand. I don't. Because just say, yeah, I'm tired. I'm sick all the time. I got this pain, that pain. It's really hard to speak about Jesus when I've got all these things coming on me. I can't tell you I understand. I just know what God's called us to be. Those who call upon the name of the Lord. May our church be described in such a way.